All right, here we go. Hey, you are now listening or watching the Halos in the Infield podcast, sponsored in part by Noble L Works over on 1621 South Sinclair, where you can get discounts by just mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Drink discounts on us, baby. And also by 714 Tickets, 714 Tickets, 714 Tickets. The price you see is the price you get, and you also get 10% additionally off in the Apply Now code once you order your tickets just by mentioning HITI, Halos in the Infield. Now enjoy the show. Hey, guys. Welcome into another episode of the Halos in the Infield podcast with your host, ToddFox. I'm doing an interview with a great Casey Stern. How you doing, my friend?
What's up, Todd? How we doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
We're doing good, man. 18 games or now 19 games into the season. We kind of can get the pulse of your team a little bit here. I know it's early in April, but there's a lot to talk about in baseball. And first, Casey, I want you to put out there your show, man. Unfiltered. I love it. The baseball talk. Let the people know where they could find you.
Yeah, you could find us on Unfiltered a number of ways. Obviously, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts. It's called Unfiltered with Casey Stern. You also can get me on Twitter or X, if you call it Twitter or X, at Casey Stern. Into the bio, you'll find the YouTube channel, which is Unfiltered with Casey Stern, and the Instagram as well. So we're all over the place. And yeah, I mean, we've got all kinds of guests. Recently, today I had Mark Feinsand on. Yesterday, Eric Hosmer. So we've got a lot of baseball guests. Other guests as well from Round Sports. I've had Rex Chapman on the show. Ariel Helwani, if you're into MMA. I do some of that as well. So we bounce around with a bunch of topics, but most of it is baseball. And you can get us Unfiltered with Casey Stern.
Yes, and you are a huge Mets fan, correct?
Die hard, unfortunately. And die usually is a big part of that die hard portion. But yeah, it is. It's been a lot of pain and therapy. So for Angel fans, I get your pain. I get it. I've been there.
Okay, now from an outsider looking in at our situation, we're kind of envious of your owner in a way. I mean, maybe he hasn't pulled all the right triggers, but he's spending money. And, you know, Steve Cohen's a big guy out there trying to like make the Mets bigger than the giant Yankees. But what do you think looking at our owner, Artie, with what he's had to either play with, what he's put money into? Like what is your overall opinion on him?
My opinion on Artie Moreno is kind of like two versions. Once we get on the other side of the Josh Hamilton situation, most of my opinion has been bad. I feel like he went from trigger shy to not wanting to spend money and kind of just dealing with what he had and not going all in. And you could talk about a million things. I could give you not wanting to give an extra year of Garrett Cole when they were as in on him as the Yankees were.
Yes.
That's one that stands out for me. I remember being at winter meetings in San Diego, and the idea that the Angels weren't going to put up those extra year, because in year 8 or year 9, it doesn't make a difference. The year 8 and year 9 not going to be good for the Yankees either. But you got to make those moves. And there were a lot of those, right? So I remember going to camp once years ago and seeing, I think it was like Daniel Nava and Craig Gentry were like fighting for a left field spot. And I was like, this is the new Artie Moreno. This is what we're going to be dealing with. It culminated for me in the Ohtani situation, which to me was just terrible. And I say this, and I mean this bluntly, it's the worst handling of a trade deadline I've seen, and I'm covering the game over 20 years. The fact that they, allowed that to play out the way it did, because for those who don't remember, I know Angel fans, obviously you do, he was healthy. And they were a week and a half to the deadline. Artie Moreno didn't even want to own the team just like 3 weeks before that. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he wants to own the team still, and they don't want to trade Ohtani. And why? Because they won 6 out of 7 games and were somehow within a shot of a planet of getting to the playoffs. And you can't do that when you've got a guy who you know is going to walk, who at the time could still pitch and was healthy pitching. And it was right during the time where he hit a home run in a doubleheader and pitched one game. I mean, he was doing all that Ohtani stuff. And instead of getting and maximizing what you could, he didn't want to do it. And why? Didn't want to lose money the rest of the year. Didn't want to admit to the fan base they knew they weren't going to keep him. So you sit there and you put that out publicly for what? It doesn't help Angel fans. It helps your team none. You get nothing. Then he gets hurt, and you end up sitting there and you lose a guy who's a unicorn and a one of one in the sport. So to me, I could go on a decade of Artie Moreno, but all you need to know is how much he bumbled the Ohtani thing to know how bad it's been. And that's not – look, this is not a negative about, people on the Angels or for Angel fans. Love the organization, but your owner, and look, I've dealt with it because, I had the Wilpons in New York, right? I'm an Islander fan in hockey, and I had somebody try and buy the team with $8 in his bank account. There's a 30 for 30 on that. So I've dealt with all this, but Artie Moreno has really kind of screwed the pooch over the last decade or so. And if I'm an Angel fan, it would drive me nuts.
It has, literally, because we were hearing rumors about who they were going to get 2 years ago. If they would have went all in on a trade, they were going to get a massive load of prospects back, and maybe having a third team involved. And then last year we heard after Ohtani was injured and the season, like you said, was to crap. You had the Rays that were wanting to make a trade, the Orioles who were wanting to pull a trade, and man, it just hits you because our cupboard's already bare as it is in the minors, and we knew as fans we were going to lose them. And then to top it off, we weren't even able to give him a swan song, at the end of the season, give him a standing O his last few home games because he was hurt. So, all in all, I think last year with a bad managing, it was just so terrible. I host a post game on this network, and just the comments and just how nobody had any kind of, optimism for the future. With Artie seemed to just kill the season before it started last year by saying he's all in.
Yeah, you look, if you're going to say you're all in, you better be all in. And if you're looking at that division and you see where the Astros have been 7 ALCSs, whatever it is, in a row, and you look at the Rangers who just won a World Series, how the hell are you telling anybody you're all in?
Yeah.
When you look at what this team has done? Nobody knows where the Mariners are because they make like 800 trades a year.
Yes.
So they're all over the place. But they're more all in, even though they're in, then they're out, then they're in, then they're out, because at least they're seemingly being active. What about the Angels offseason told you they're all in? And by the way, I love Ron Washington. When we get to that, I don't have any issue with Wash, but you can only make a certain amount of chicken salad out of the other kind of chicken. And that is the problem right now if you're looking at this roster outside of Mike Trout, if we're being fair.
Oh, we're being more than fair. You just have to watch what Adele's been doing in Hicks out there. To see, we got some 4A guys at best, on this roster. Well, that's a nice transition. Let's get into Ron Washington because, last year we called him Numbnuts Nevin. He just was too much into analytics. He never chased wins. He openly admitted that. Ron Washington is bringing back batting practice. We didn't even have batting practice last year. He's running defensive drills, bunting drills, things that they thought were waste of outs. And just his demeanor around the team, how he's literally doing what you said with making that chicken meal. What are your thoughts on Ron Washington, past and now present with the Angels?
I love Wash. I've always loved Wash. Spent a lot of time with those Texas Ranger teams when he was there, and not once but twice. And I've always said this about Wash. X's and O's in terms of, running a bullpen, certain decisions down the stretch that he made in Texas in the postseason, they weren't the greatest, right? They just weren't. Motivational skills, understanding humans, having guys who want to play for you, he's an 11 out of 10. That will never be an issue with this team. Even in the doldrums, he will make them believe that he still believes. And that's a huge thing you need to have. The other thing you got to know about Wash is that defensively, especially in the infield, he's a wizard in terms of instruction and teaching. These kids will learn a boatload, and you've got a lot of other guys on that coaching staff he put together who can do that as well. But this is a guy who went to Oakland. The first year he was with Oakland, his job was to turn Marcus Semien, who after being in Chicago was a guy who was a bad shortstop, and turn him into a guy who could play a successful level of shortstop, where before he moved to second base, now being Corey Seager, he became. He then went to Atlanta to work with Dansby Swanson, who they said had issues defensively and was not going to be very good, and turned into a Gold Glover. All right, Wash is a guy who really understands defense, fundamentals, and from that standpoint, this team, and you need that. Look, when you've got a young team and you got a team that's going to make a lot of mistakes, you got to try and cut those errors down. And not just errors that are going to scoreboard, but mental errors. As the season goes on, there are going to be some of those. That's what happens when you get young players, but he's the right guy for all of that. So is he a guy who, I think if you told me this is a championship team and there were other options, is he the top option? Maybe, maybe not. But for a team that's probably not going to win a lot, that needs to learn, that needs to fundamentally get better, and needs to change their attitude and culture, he's a guy who his middle name is culture. He's the right guy for this spot. He is.
Perfectly said. And I think Angel fans, even if they don't know his past, they're in amazement of what he's getting out of Rendon. I mean, we tried everything with Rendon since he signed, and that whole Garrett Cole debacle went. It was like fantasy football. You know, the top guy goes, you just
That's
get the
right.
next available. We didn't need a third baseman.
He doesn't pitch. I don't know if they were aware. You don't actually have to allocate all that money to a guy who plays third base and hits a lot of doubles. But anyway.
Exactly. Well said. But what are you thinking of Rendon? I don't know if you've paid attention, but like
I have.
He's lately been on a tear, and his hustle play last night in the win, and then the fact he had 9 hits in 4 games. I mean, this kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, with his just bad attitude and the way he's pushed fans off. I know Angel fans, social media were like, "Hey, we got to give him a standing ovation opening day." Like, I was there opening day, man. They booed the hell out of him.
I think it's possible, even though he wouldn't admit it, that the idea that it's permeated now within his peers and into the league, that he doesn't want to play baseball and doesn't like baseball, has bothered him. Do I think he's succeeding now for the fans? No. And by the way, a lot of players don't, and don't take that the wrong way. But I do think that players who are successful, and look, I followed this guy and covered him when he was with DC, right, with the Nationals. Guys had a lot of abilities, had big postseason moments. Whether he's had a bad career as an Angel or not, he's a guy who's got a lot of talent, clearly, right?
Yep.
Those guys have ego. And I think somewhere in here, his ego got poked. And the idea of all the conversation around the league and even players starting to talk about some of the comments he had, if he doesn't care, if he doesn't like to play baseball, I think he wanted to prove to the league more than the fans and to himself that he still was that player. Now, is it sustainable? I have no idea. I mean, based on the way it's been, next Wednesday, he'll just decide he doesn't want to play anymore. I have no idea. I honestly can't figure it out, if we're being honest. But
is he the hardest player you've ever had to try to figure out?
That's a loaded question, because there have been a lot of players that have been difficult to, I remember Milton Bradley. I mean, there have been a lot of players over the years that have been hard to figure out. Why can Willie Mopena hit the ball 9,000 feet in batting practice and then never hit a home run in the big leagues? There are a lot of things that are hard to figure out. Daniel Cabrera for the Orioles, who had the stuff to win a Cy Young and then couldn't win a game on the big league mound. So Rich Harden, we could go on forever. But I think he's hard to figure out in terms of what happened from that flight from DC out to the 5 freeway. Like what happened there? Like I don't. It's not even like the same guy. Forget the same player. It's not the same guy. This is a guy who was around Bryce Harper and fed off of that attitude, and you couldn't have more of an anti-Bryce Harper attitude about the game of baseball in the way that Rendon has been as an Angel. So I don't really understand it, but he could still play. So he may not be very likable, but you just want him to get hits, and he could still get hits as long as he keeps his head on straight, I think, and is healthy and wants to play. He can be productive, sure.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, because anything he can give us right now is going to help this team that's already struggling to hit. I mean, so far I've kind of been amazed that their pitching's better. They're not throwing more pitches than the opponent. Their strikeouts are a little bit down. They're making more contact, and they're not always getting the results like a consistent team would. There's still guys that are struggling out the gate, but there still is a breath of fresh air. You got your Taylor Wards, and you got your Detmers, who's pitching great. Tyler Anderson's been pitching great. What's your opinion? Like what would be your ceiling for the Angels and your bottoming out basement if all things were go wrong?
Well, I mean, for this year, it doesn't matter, and I know that sounds terrible, but where are you going this year? Like in that division, like you just can't go anywhere. So I think you need things to go right with players you can move at the deadline. You need to be able to grow, and you need to figure out the unanswerable question, which is, how are you going to build a team around Mike Trout and keep Mike Trout? Because if I'm Mike Trout, I would leave. And that's not because, just so people don't misunderstand, this has nothing to do with, I don't like the Angels. I don't want you to win. I don't want you to have Mike Trout. If I was an Angel fan, I would be angry you're not doing enough to win with Mike Trout.
And we are.
and if you're Mike Trout, right, and you put yourself in his shoes, in a day and age where you can get traded, and I know what his contract looks like, but as long as he's healthy enough, we've seen trades that are made where contracts you don't see them can be moved, and then all of a sudden they get moved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you want to? Because how are you going to win at the highest level? The guy has 11 postseason at-bats. I was at Turner doing that series when they played the Royals in
Yes.
2014, I think it was. And
Yes.
they won 98 games. And he played in 3 games and went 1 for 11, I Bleav.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest part about that, not to make Angels fans sicker, but Howie Kendrick, who I think had the best at-bats in that postseason run, they immediately got rid of like 14 seconds after the season ended.
Yeah.
David Freese, who had huge at-bats in that September and October and in the series, they basically just let walk. And I think he went to that point, was it Pittsburgh or the Dodgers? And then eventually the Dodgers, they let him walk. Made no sense either. So
Mm-hmm.
just to add to that. But if you think about it, Mike Trout has been in 3 postseason games. I would, if I'm an Angel fan, I'm worried about that. So the sad part is you have to figure out how to build around him, but at the same time, keep him. And you're going to have to spend money and you're going to have to overspend. But for this year, the way the roster is built now, they kind of got to maximize what they can and sell at the deadline. And when you sell at the deadline, it makes you worse. Because even if you're around a 500 team and everything looks like, oh, well, maybe we'll make a run, maybe we'll stay in it, maybe we'll play meaningful games. If you sell, all of a sudden you're winning 70. So I feel like by the end of the year, if they're actually successful moving forward long term, it'll be a team that did a good job selling at the deadline, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the thing is with the Angels, when Artie decided to call us Los Angeles, I don't think the whole rebuild was in his vocabulary, because we wanted a rebuild since Social was gone, when Osmus first took over, because you look what the Orioles are now. I mean, they took it on the chin. Yeah, they lost like 3. They had 3 seasons, I think, of 100 losses or more. But look what they are now. I mean, they've got, now also goes with scouting and everything. We understand we don't have the best scouting either, but I think Angel fans would have been okay with the Ohtani being traded, okay with the Trout being traded, had we had direction. Casey, there's been no direction with the Angels, and now we're all asking ourselves, do we go with what you described as far as getting these players pushed and making stats and trading at the deadline to restock, or are we going to go somehow all in or all in on the offseason?
Well, in the offseason, I think you're going to have to do it financially with money. I mean, you're in the middle of the year already.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, and I deal with this with the Mets in New York and other, with the Braves in their division. How are you going to get better than the Rangers and the Astros? That's the only question.
Mm-hmm.
It is not how we get, because that is how you win. You're going to have to be better than those teams. The Rangers, who just won a World Series, called up Jack Leiter today as we do this, right? They are still waiting for Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom. We've heard of them on the mend, okay? The Astros are getting Verlander back on the mound this weekend. How in the hell are the Angels supposed to win against? I mean, I'm just being honest, right?
You're true.
So the question is how? There's only 2 answers. One, you can overspend and have some huge offseason and spend $500 million, and Artie's not going to do that. And that still may not work. Go see the Padres and the Mets last year.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could build the right way, take the pain, take the lumps, draft correctly, make smart trades, and now you need Mike Trout to wait like 4 years before you can even win. And you need to do what the Orioles did, but they didn't have Mike Trout when they started doing it. And that's hard to get the patience to do. Hard from a fan base standpoint, and hard for the players. It's hard to get free agents. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know this. The question always needs to be asked, how are you going to be as good as the team you're trying to catch? And if that team you're trying to catch is the Rangers and the Astros, you got a long, long way to go. Long way to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping for realignment right now.
Right? I mean, seriously, yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing that's been bothering Angel fans is just, the either are we in or are we out, because we can't be doing the same down the middle. And it's a shame. You brought up 2014. It's been a decade since we've made the playoffs, and we could have did something in between there, when his stock was a lot higher. He might be having a bounce back year this year, but look at all those other years we suffered with him either being injured or we just, like you said, had no one around him. one other thing I want to get into, Casey, is the Otani thing, and you touched on it earlier with what happened with him, playing here, and we kind of just rolled the horse and got the money in, already fat in his pockets, but then we got nothing for him. When he went to the Dodgers, number one, were you surprised he went to the Dodgers, or were you already anticipating that?
I was anticipating it because it made the most sense. I mean, first of all, he's already in that area, so he doesn't have to leave. Second of all, they already had as good a team as anybody in the league. So outside of him going to the Braves, where maybe they would have been better than even they are with him as a Dodger, where else would you go? And it's Hollywood, and he's one of the only baseball players who can make that kind of money off the field. Not like he needs it because he just got $700 million, but he can. Because he is that unicorn, and he's not just like another boring baseball player. And look, I love baseball, but this is just what happens. ESPN did a poll years ago. They do one every year, the top 100 most popular athletes in the world. There was a year where Derek Jeter was the only baseball player in the top 100. He was number 13, but he had retired 3 years before that. So that's a problem. So, I mean, honestly, that's just the way it is. So, but he's not in that. I mean, he's one of the most famous athletes in the world. Where else would you be? It was either New York with the Yankees for me always, or the Dodgers with LA. Never thought he was going to Toronto. Never thought he was going to Chicago with the Cubs. It was to me always, and if you're in his shoes and you're looking to maximize being Shohei Ohtani, to me, those were the two places. Either I want to be a New York Yankee, because we all know, look, I'm not a Yankee fan by any stretch at all, but we all know what that logo is. And we all know what it is to people overseas. It is almost the MLB logo in terms of the representation of what it is for kids growing up who see it, right? And then there's the Dodgers, who are in LA and in Hollywood. No offense to the fact that the Angels, we all know, are in Anaheim. They're not really in Los Angeles, for those of you who actually been to those stadiums, right?
Exactly.
So to me, it always seemed like a fit. And with the amount of money, I never would have picked that they would have done the contract the way they did. That, to me, was a big surprise, which is crazy how much money was deferred.
Yeah, that is amazing how they got away with it, but they found a loophole, right? So, I mean, those guys aren't billionaires that own the Dodgers for no reason. But so when that happened, we were still licking our wounds over here in Anaheim, and because, again, our biggest thing was, man, we wished he would have went anywhere else but there. I would have been fine with him playing with the Mets, the Yankees, the Braves. Who cares? But the fact he's this close, and to people outside of California, there is a big rivalry with the Angels and Dodgers fans. They don't like each other. And those games, when they actually play, are pretty intense, just not on the level of the Mets and Yankees, but they're pretty intense. And the reason why I bring that up is we were already licking our wounds. They were doing the Nelson from Simpsons, ha. And then the Ohtani thing came out with Ippei. And then we were kind of like raising an eyebrow, like, like this is interesting. And I still am feeling my opinion. I'll give it real quick before you give yours, because I want to hear yours. But my opinion real quick is, I think he was the fall guy. And he was responsible, yes, for taking the bets and everything else like that. But he didn't rat him out as far as like the wire. Like Ohtani knew, because we brought up many videos where he's speaking English and he tried to play the no habla inglés type thing, but in Japanese. So what are your thoughts on Ohtani and what happened there with Ippei, and should have the league stepped in and gave out some punishment?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the back end. The league cannot give punishment when we're talking about the federal government and the IRS and Homeland Security and literally, right? I am the first one to say Rob Manfred has no accountability. I'm the first one to say it about jerseys in the backs, which you got to use a magnifying glass to see what's on there. I'm the first one to say it when it comes to the fact that the ball was changed years ago and they acted like somebody snuck in the warehouse and did it. They had no idea. And a number of other things. The A's situation, we can go on forever.
Oh, yeah.
But when Homeland Security and the federal government and the U.S. attorneys and the IRS are all involved, and they all investigate thousands and thousands of texts and phone calls and everything else that they did, and they come out and they say Ohtani didn't know, it's not for Major League Baseball to just step in and to give him some punishment if those folks are not punishing him. So I don't think he deserves any punishment. That's first of all.
Okay.
Second of all, I don't know. I never thought he bet ever. Like I never thought that they were his bets. At first, it seemed to me like the story was 48 hours to ESPN one way and then went the other. And common sense seemed to be Ohtani did his friend Ohtani does seem like a nice guy. Did his friend a favor, lent him some money because he got some money for his gambling problem. And then his handlers realized, oh, shoot, you realize you can't do that.
Yep.
And maybe he thought, well, I didn't gamble on baseball. And all of a sudden, then the other, Ippei's got to go ahead and backtrack. Ohtani's got to get separated. That is how it looked to me. However, we all want conspiracies. And I'm not in any way some prude, pundit who's going to sit there and tell you that everything is honky-dory and Hallmark. If it's not, it's not. But when they go through all of these texts and you see the text that Ippei sent to this bookie, it tells me Ohtani had no idea. These texts are crazy. These texts that Ippei sent, which are all in those articles from ESPN, you can go read them. But I did a podcast, shameless plugging. I did a podcast episode on this where I read them all because I don't want to say changed my mind, but was very assertive then about what seemed to have happened. You got Ippei texting this bookie, upping his bets like a madman, like a lunatic constantly. You've got him going in there with LOL, I need more money. And so it is loco. Okay. You said no habla. I'll say loco. Okay. Completely loco. That combined with the fact that in all of their interactions, in all their investigations, they could find literally nothing that said Ohtani knew anything. The bookie didn't say he ever thought Ohtani was nobody has Ohtani other than what we know of with the interpreter and then the story that was put out. This guy's a liar and clearly Ippei clearly has a major gambling problem. When you're an addict and you're an addict like that, you lie about everything. So do I believe now who should be at fault and who's guilty? Let me tell you who's guilty. Ohtani's team is guilty.
There you go.
Of handlers. Because how stupid can you be that you're only dealing and listening to the translator? You don't have any way. You can't get Google Translate. There's no way you could, because literally that's what happened. Ippei told him, oh, yeah, this is what was going on. And they just talked through him. I don't understand that. So, look, am I 100% sure? No. Is it possible Ohtani knew more? Of course it's possible. But when this is not Rob Manfred, we're talking about Homeland Security.
Yeah.
If they got no reason to protect Ohtani, like the idea that they got to save baseball, that's dumb. Like they look better if they come out and find something about a big name. Then it's the heroic attorney general that was able to crack the case. If they're saying there's no case to crack, I have to back them up and say that maybe there's not. And I do think there's a real chance that this is just Ohtani is really naive and got hoodwinked by a real son of a gun, if we're just staying family rated. Because those texts of that bookie are crazy.
If he is, that guy is one hell of a scam artist. That's for damn sure. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting that's a good take right there. And I think the best thing for me that came out of this, as far as just laughing at the situation, was the meme of Pete Rose saying, I wish I had an interpreter, maybe things would be better for him as well. Well, Casey, you have any final thoughts, man? I know it's late on the East Coast and I really appreciate your time. We hope to, we could get your thoughts later on in the baseball season, maybe catch up with your Mets and other teams, because we'll be playing the Mets at some point. So maybe you can we can do a little crossover. Oh, you're muted. We're still muted.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
It's my fat fingers. Okay, so look, first of all, happy to catch up anytime. Second of all, the Mets, they're a whole nother thing. We could talk about them next time.
Sure.
Because I had to deal with all the money that they spent last year. But although actually I like the direction of the team right now. But yeah, man, I'm happy to come on anytime. We could definitely chat again. And I hope that, the Angel fans, you guys deserve to win and to experience some success. And to not have to watch highlights of like Vlad Guerrero or Jeff Weaver, Jared Weaver, excuse me. How could I say Jeff? Sorry. Or whoever late at night here on the East Coast, whoever it might be. But I hope that they build Mike Trout into a guy who could be in a postseason stage for you guys and ladies, and for us who cover the game, because we want to see him on the big stage in October for sure.
Absolutely. Appreciate the words, Casey. And as we hit the outro, you want to give your again where they can get a hold of you?
Yes, please. Right now, don't do anything else. Go to Twitter. Give me a follow at Casey Stern. Okay, now you did that. Press pause. Now press play again. Go over to YouTube, Unfiltered with Casey Stern. Like, subscribe. Okay, now you did that. Press pause. Press play again. Now go to Instagram, Unfiltered with Casey Stern. Give me a follow over there. And now you have done your homework, and I appreciate you. And you could follow along the way.
Yes, do that, please. All right. So for ToddFox and Casey Stern, appreciate your time. Go Angels.